In this video, I'm going to detail exactly what I mean by hospitality is broken, how we're redefining hospitality to fix it, and how we're delighting our guests with real-life examples so that you can implement these tips as well. I think there's a few things that are happening, and all these trends are kind of converging post-COVID. Everybody sort of recognized, they looked around and realized that there was this whole world and life and lifestyle, and remote work became in vogue, and it really stretched people's ideas of what was possible and what they wanted to do. And that also included the service industry. So a lot of the hourly employees that were waiters and waitresses and front desk people and so on, I'm not exactly sure where they went or why they're no longer available, but it seemed like there was no labor. It was really hard to find people to work in any of these like hourly type jobs, and the service level basically decreased. And that created a frustration for both guests and for labor, and it was a very challenging period. And I think as we come out, now we're in 2024, we're starting to see normalization, and there's some trends here that are really meaningful that we should spend a minute talking about. People are going back to the office, not happily, they're going in begrudgingly, but the reality of it is more and more people are going back into the office. And at the same time, what we're starting to see is people craving a different type of experience. And that's what created the opportunity for next-gen hospitality. I don't believe that the service that we're receiving on a daily basis when we go into establishments, whether it's restaurants or hotels or Airbnbs or any of these things, are on par with what people really want. And the reason is, historically, five-star hospitality meant really buttoned up, people in tuxedos and suits and Mr. Fertig, how are you? And really it was a grandiose, aspirational type environment where the way that hospitality was expressed was by making guys like me feel important, right? I was a big shot, and there was a lot of staff and a lot of people and doors opened and luggage carried and so on and so forth. And that's always fun on occasion, and there's a time and a place for that, but that's not every time and it's not every place. And in fact, the opposite is also true, where people then said, you know what, I want privacy, leave me alone. And this was also due to COVID. I was worried about germs and illness, and I just wanted to be left alone, and I wanted to be with my family, and that cohesive unit was really, really important. And so like, leave me alone, and I don't want cleaning. And what we witnessed was hotels stopping to do daily cleaning for safety and sanitary reasons and not spreading COVID. And guess what? Now, a lot of guests don't want daily housekeeping. They find it intrusive. Knock, knock, housekeeping, or I don't want people messing with my stuff, or I don't need it done every day. It feels wasteful. Good traditional hospitality is consistent, and consistency requires standard operating procedures, and the hotels that do it best do it day in, day out, 24/7, 365, and if they're global, they do it in all their properties. What's lost in that is me, the guest. I'm literally just one cog in their standard operating procedure, and while they smile and they're wonderful and they're hospitable and they're friendly and they do their absolute best to delight me, if you stop and think about it, you look at it from afar, from 30,000 feet, and you look down, Richard and the guest is just fulfilling their standard operating procedures. From check-in, where I have to give IDs and credit cards and answer questions and make small talk, and sometimes there's a line and it's frustrating. That's not for the guest, that is for the hotel. And then if you take a look at all of the other things in this reactive hospitality model, they have all this labor standing by, and it's really inefficient and it's very expensive. And what are they doing? Waiting. What are they waiting for? Richard to have an issue. And then as soon as Richard has an issue, I call downstairs, hi, concierge, listen, I'd like to know what restaurant do you recommend, or how do I do this? Then they're very, very hospitable, but they're not doing it in advance. Now, where I think hospitality is going, and what we're at the fore of and what we're defining as next-gen hospitality, is proactive hospitality. And it doesn't start by just giving restaurant recommendations in advance. It starts by understanding who's coming and for what reason, and what the purpose is and what success looks like. And let me give you an example. Richard as an individual travels often and frequently and for very different purposes. So if I'm traveling with my family and my daughters, that's a very different trip. If I'm traveling with my teammates and colleagues here at Stomp Capital, that's a very different trip. If I'm traveling on a sports adventure and I'm going heli skiing, that's a very different trip. And if I'm traveling with my fiance, just the two of us, that's a very different trip. Same individual, maybe different locations, or they could be the same locations, but what success looks like, what I'm striving for, what I envision in my mind is quite different. And so from a proactive hospitality perspective, we ask, Richard, what brings you to the Outer Banks? Richard, what brings you to Nosara? What does success look like? What would you like to do? What would you like to accomplish? And so in understanding who's coming and what success looks like, we can delight them. It might be, I want to come and relax and I want total privacy and I don't want anybody to knock on my door. Totally valid, and there's times I want that. Or it could be, we just got engaged and I want to go to the best restaurants and I want the tickets to this concert and this nightclub and can you get me into here and I want to rent a boat or whatever. That's a very different outcome. And so I believe going forward, even though everybody says that they're guest-centric and their guest experience is the primary thing that they're working hard and diligently for on a daily basis, it's not true, because they're working in the confines of their standard operating procedures, in the confines of their existing building, in the confines of legacy hospitality. And you just can't do exactly what I explained to you from a linear, iterative perspective. You have to wipe the entire slate clean. You have to build from the ground up. It's purpose-built. It starts with the very first point of contact and the very first dialogue, all the way through until the guest departs, and then the follow-up. And if and when we do that properly and successfully, we create raving fans who are delighted, who spread the word on social media, user-generated content, tell their friends, tell their family, tell their loved ones, come back again. And that's the opportunity going forward in next-gen hospitality. So it may be hard to believe, but blowing people's minds is much easier than you think because it's so rare. And here's the kicker. For those of you who are on a budget or early stage or startup or whatever, if you do this right, oftentimes it's free or very low budget. Some key examples and how one might actually do this on your own really starts by asking the right questions. And then this is the part that most people miss. Actually listening and hearing what the benefit is or what the actual request is. So let me give you a real life example. We had a guest who booked our 14-bedroom house down in the Outer Banks. He booked it for himself. It was his 60th birthday, and he wanted to come down and kite with all of his buddies. And these were the who's who of private equity and investment banking, and so money wasn't really an object, and they're very well traveled. They've traveled to all the best places in the world and all the best hotels. And he was kind of booking his own 60th birthday. And Erica, who was leading our hospitality team, got involved and started asking all the right questions and helped create this like totally bespoke custom birthday party for a week. And it involved all sorts of amenities, chefs and yoga and massage. And Erica reached out to his wife, who was not coming on this trip. It was a guy's trip, and said, tell me a little bit about your husband. Like, what does he like to do? What's special? How can we surprise him? How can we delight him? He's planning his own birthday party with his guy friends, and he's going kiting. And that was like, for him, exactly what he wanted to do. But taking that extra step and reaching out and surprising him by speaking to his wife, they added something that was meaningful to him. And I'm not going to share it because it's not appropriate. But the point is, it was a total surprise. He had no idea how that happened. And his mind was blown. It's like, what are you kidding me? I never even thought this was possible. How did you do this? How did you accomplish this? And it's one of those things where, from an empathetic perspective and putting yourself in the guest's perspective, not our standard operating procedures, not our menu of a la carte options and just pick 2 from column A and 1 from column B, but actually thinking about this. It's his 60th birthday. He's incredibly successful. He's paying for all of his friends to come. What has anybody done for him? And she made it her responsibility to reach out to his loved ones, find out a little bit more, and offer, hey, would you like to do something special for him that's going to surprise and delight him? And that moved the needle. And that's what creates these raving fans. So the point is, you have to ask the right questions. You have to put yourself in the guest's shoes. What do they want? What's really meaningful? What's really memorable? How can we move the needle every single guest, every single time? Now, it's a lot of work and it's not easy and it takes a lot of time and patience, and not even guests are not forthcoming. They don't know. They've never been asked this, right? Normally what they do is they just book online, or they pick up the phone and call Central Reservations and they book their room and make a restaurant reservation, or they hire an event planner. Think of yourself more as an event planner. Think of yourself more as a wedding planner. Think of yourself as somebody whose purpose is to delight these individuals, and not just this perfunctory, like, let me take your reservation, and can you spell your last name, and can you give me your credit card? I mean, these are all really important things from a business perspective, but the guest does not care about our business at all. And we as a business need to spend much more time thinking about the guest experience. And I don't mean superficially, that's what I'm saying. Traditionally, legacy hospitality does it. They say we're about the guest. They say that we've created this pool, we've created this restaurant, we've created this gym. This is all for the guest, and they can use it and they can access it and it's open. Okay, but those are like amenities, those are configurations in the hotel, those are things that are standard. We kind of have grown to expect them. None of those are going to move the needle or be memorable or delight somebody or have that person pick up the phone and say, you've got to come down here. You can't believe what I just did. And to finish the story, after this great group event and the 60th birthday, and some of them actually were VCs that funded Airbnb in the early stages, I think in the Series B, they pulled us aside and said, we have no idea what it is that you're doing here that's so different, but it feels different, it's remarkable, and this is the future of hospitality. And that's what gave us such confidence and conviction that we were doing something that was unique, that was necessary, that was felt, that was creating joy, that was bringing world-class like experiences to others. And that's the mission at Stomp Capital, is to spread that joy. So how can we create these world-class experiences for others? First, put yourself in their shoes. If you've never done any of this and you don't have that ability, then find somebody who can. And what I mean by that is, it's not obvious to me, right? Like, I'm the head of this company, I travel all the world, but I would never think to find out the colors of a college campus and put that on cupcakes. It's just like over my head. So if I'm not the right person, I've paired myself with somebody who has incredible emotion intelligence, that's caring, their love language is gifts. Find somebody on your team who thinks that way. Complement your skill set by finding somebody who does think that way. If you're doing this properly, you should be blowing people's minds. Not because you've done something that's so fancy or extravagant or expensive or all the transactional ways that people normally express like importance. You should be blowing their mind because of the thoughtfulness, the care, the paying attention to the details, these small little things that might even be free that they didn't even know. Figuring out what somebody's favorite food is and that's what's served on their birthday. Figuring out what the college colors are. All these little things, and they're not really challenging if you have that mindset and that's what it is that you're focused on. If instead you're focused on standard operating procedures and moving through, here's the sausage and we're gonna make the sausage and they're going through the sausage factory, you're not delighting anybody. But instead, if you're like, wait, somebody's coming for a 60th birthday. Wait, somebody's coming for their kid's graduation. Wait, what's important? How can we do this differently? What can we think about? How can we surprise and delight them? That's where you really move the needle. So here's the challenge. Comment below with what you've done to delight guests that we can all benefit from, because sharing is caring, and the more that we know, the more that we impact others, one, the better the world is and the happier, the more joy and delight. But two, a byproduct of that is the more successful and profitable our businesses are. So please comment below with your best tips. What have you done that has really moved the needle for a guest, surprise, delight, whatever it may be? I've already shared with you some of my tips. I can't wait to read yours.